Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be behind the computer again to have another recording. I'm here with a friend and colleague, Boham, who was kind enough to rent his earpiece to me in order to make this recording. Mine actually made some sounds which were not ideal for recording, and his does a better job than mine. Boham, thank you very much. We'll get on straight with our lesson on variables, and today we'll be diving deeper into variables. For the lesson today, we'll recap our previous lesson. We'll look more into complex variable types. We'll specifically look at vectors today. We'll look at the properties of vectors, take a little detour, but quickly get back on track and discuss subsetting, and I'll provide some references for the tools I used to generate this presentation. It may interest you to know that this presentation was done with R and nothing more. I did everything in R Studio. It is not a PowerPoint presentation, as you can see clearly here. That this is a document I'm reading from my computer. So let's get on with things. Let's refresh our memories as we said. We discussed variables, and so far we have looked at the types of variables called atomic variables. Atomic as in they hold a single value of some sort and not anymore. So, example, we created the CTRY variable and we assigned it Ghana, which is said to be an atomic variable. And this is the code that we used, and it gives you Ghana. This is atomic. There is a gotcha working with strings as atomic variables, but we'll look at that in the future. For our next one, we are going to recap, uh, we are going to look at complex variables. So, vectors are another type of variables, and they're able to hold two or more values. The values don't need to be the same, they could be of different types or even different values, but then you are holding two or more values in a single variable. And in this case, we have a vector. To create a vector, we use the C and parenthesis function to create a vector. We'll look at functions into details very soon. You can't discuss computer programming without looking at functions. So, as we said, to create a variable, you have the variable name, which in this case we are saying fruit. Then we are assigning apple, comma bananas. So apple is one value, banana becomes another value in our variable called fruit, which is a vector. If you were to type fruit after creating this, you will get apple, banana. So we say this vector contains two items or two elements. Anyhow, you want to have it's the same. Moving forward, a vector, we've demonstrated strings so far, but vectors can also be numbers, as in having a vector of numbers which holds 1, comma 40, comma 30. The last one, you wouldn't have to put the comma there. The vectors don't have to be in any order. You could have 32, 41, whatsoever. The computer doesn't care. You just assign your vectors. The most important thing is knowing their positions. If we were to type nums in the console after running this particular line, we would get 1, 40, and 30, which are the three values that are contained in our nums variable. Okay, we are going to move on to properties of vectors as we promised that we would before we take our detour. So vectors are indexed from position 1, and you access that with an angular bracket and put the number indicating the index of the value that you want to access. We will demonstrate very shortly. So I must be a numeric value. So if I say fruit one, well, I'll get an apple. Remember, the variable fruit held the value apple, comma banana, and apple is our first element. So to access the first element, we will say fruit angular bracket one. Make sure you close the bracket. You are accessing the first element. You can also use negative indexes. Now, if you say fruit negative one, you are saying it should start from the last element, and so minus one becomes banana. We had only two elements in our vector, so this would be how to you could access apple by using negative two, which in this case will come from the right, and apple will be on negative two position. Or if you want to access banana, you say fruit brackets two, accessing banana as the second element in your vector. More properties, we say vectors are mutable. It means we can add to them with, and this is an example. We had fruit that holding two elements. To add a third one is just like substituting. We are saying that for fruit, the third element should be set to mango. If you have been following this tightly and you type fruit, you now get apple, banana, and mango because it holds three elements. We can also modify a vector using the same technique. So for instance, if I said the second element of fruit should be assigned orange, and we are to go ahead, we will realize that fruits have been assigned orange. It was initially banana. Okay. Now, because the two, this one now says orange because the two of them are in sync. It's the same fruit elements we are operating with. Okay. Can I go on? We are going to take a little detour and get to some. So there is this, let's call it the range function. When you want a range of numbers, you put one on the left and the one on the right. You are saying that you should generate a series of numbers from the value on the right to the value on the left. Either way you want to look at it, it works. So you could have 1 and colon 10 means generate numbers from 1 to 10. If you get 10 range 1, that will mean generate it backwards. So it will be 10, 9 up to 1. It works both ways. And this is the code demonstrating that. Now we can actually assign this process to a variable. So I'm going to call this variable VCT, and it will hold the numbers 1 to 10. Let's remember this VCT. We'll come back to it quite soon. Okay. With that knowledge, we can now subset vectors, and subsetting is a very important part of uh, vectors or complex variables. So you can access the range of elements in a vector. Say you want element 3 to 8. You can use that same range operator to access elements 3 to 8 in a vector, and it will go like vector 3 range 8. And remember, our vector or our VCT variable contains numbers 1 to 8. We are saying that it should select 3 to 8 for us, and indeed it will print 3 to 8. It's just a coincidence that our vector contains the numbers 1 to 10. It could contain any number of elements, but this would always select elements 3 to the 8th element in the vector. You can actually select other arbitrary locations. So there is a vector called letters. All these are valid. The one with caps holds capital letters in the English alphabet, and this one holds them in lower cases. We can use them for demonstration. So if you wanted the 5th, 10th, 17th, and second element, as you may have guessed right, we will do letter C. Remember, the C is used to construct a vector. We are saying we should take the 10th, the 5th, the 17th, and the second. I intentionally mix this up. It doesn't care. It will only select it as you supply it. So we know J is the 10th element. We know E is the 5th element. Kill. and B is the second element. It will select it from letters. Remember, letters is an R constant which holds the English alphabet, or if you are watching a different language, it will hold the language, the alphabets in your language. Okay, we can use an existing vector to subset another vector. So we have letters, but remember our VCT holds 1 to 10. So this is saying that you should select element 1 to 10. If you had a list you already wanted to subset, if you had a vector, the reason why I had to correct this is a list operates differently when it comes to computer language. It's a bit tricky, but let's use vector for ease. So this would mean select 1 to 10, which the VCT holds. So if you select A to J, you can count your fingers to make sure that A to J actually are the first 10 letters in the English alphabet. There are even more ways. You can even throw in the kitchen sink. So here I have letters and I'm saying select VCT, which is 1 to 10. When you are done with that, select 1 to 3 elements, and this should select A, B, and C. When you are done with that, select the 20th, the 16th, and the 21st element. And all this is a mixture of vectors. Yes, I will gladly subset it for you. So we have the first 10 here, then the first 3 here. This is the 20th, this is the 16th, and this is the 21st element of the English alphabet. There are even more ways you could select with true, false, and so here I'm creating a vector called cell, which was true, false, true, true, false. Let's see how this is going to work. If I generated a vector of 1 to 5 and I said you should select using the cell variable, remember we are saying true, so it will select 1. At position 2, we are saying that it is false, so it will select it. At position 3, we are saying it is true, so it will select position 3. And at position 4, we are saying it is true, so you should select that. We are not interested in the fifth element, so it doesn't get selected. All these are ways that you can use to select or subset elements from a vector. Just be particular about how I skip the C. If you have been paying attention, I did skip the C, and this also works. It's a valid way of just generating a short vector. Without it, I couldn't have used the angular bracket. It would fail instantly. I didn't want to put the C here. Okay. So uh, we've come to the end of today's lesson, and I intentionally put these references here. If you've enjoyed this presentation, you should know that it was done with Quarto. Quarto is a new markdown syntax in R. I decided to experiment with it. Hopefully, the presentation should get better. And within Quarto, this is called the Review.js presentation. I hope it replaces PowerPoint very soon. I particularly like HTML PowerPoint because you can share it when the person just needs a browser, and browsers are ubiquitous of late. And these things you saw were actually done with a package or an extension called Revealed Auto Agenda. It's just I'm just experimenting with these packages to see that how do we go. But I do really hope the presentation went well. Once again, I thank you for coming. I don't know if Boham wants to ask any question, which from the short, if there's something I left out that I must address. Are you okay? Does it mean I can give you an assignment? Can I give you an assignment? Okay. Boham says you take an assignment. I will give him an assignment and we'll all discuss it later. Thank you.